folks, welcome to another edition of Cooking for Critters with Clarissa. Today we're going to be making the ultimate equine cookie. So for your horse, for your donkey, they're just going to love the ingredients that we have in this. And it's going to be a nice cooked or baked cookie for them, so not a raw cookie. So get your ovens preheated to 375 and we'll start looking at the ingredients and mixing it all together. So now that we have the oven preheating to 375, we want to make sure that we're shredding the carrot, and I'm also going to shred or grate the apple. You may choose to finely dice the apple, but I like it a little bit better when it's shredded finely and more uniformly. I find that it separates the moisture out and allows the biscuits or cookies to form better and to stay more solid during the baking process. Let's get this grating. We're only going to use one carrot here, and I'm using just the one carrot, but I'm also leaving the skin on just for extra nutrients. So we're just grating the apple, as I mentioned earlier. I prefer grating the apple because it really allows the moisture of the apple to come through, and it helps to bind that cookie a little bit better, so we're not going to end up with a cookie dough that's going to fall apart as we're shaping it. And we're just going to shape it into rounds anyway, but you can also shape it into rectangles or logs depending on the preference of your equine friends, but also yourself. Some people like to use a round cookie in the palm of their hand. Other people prefer to have a rectangular shaped cookie that they can just pass off to their horse or donkey. I prefer the open palm method when I'm is that I try to use every dish possible when I'm cooking or baking something. And as you can see, it's true. It's very true. But it also makes my life a lot easier, and especially when doing videos for all of you, if I have everything together and ready to go, because we're just going to add everything into this one bowl and mix it all together. So what I'm going to end up doing, I'm going to start with the rolled oats here. This is 2 cups of rolled oats. You may choose to use a different type of oat, whether it's quick cooking oats or instant oats. I like rolled oats. It's just a little bit more hearty when you're making the biscuits. Add all of our dry ingredients together once, and there's only 2 of them, so it makes it pretty easy. This is a whole wheat flour. You may also choose to use oat flour, either store-bought, or you can make it yourself by blending it in the blender. You can also use regular flour. I like to use whole wheat flour, again, for that hardiness that we're looking for in this biscuit. I'm going to add the apples next, and this is just 1 apple that I grated, and of course the stem and seeds are removed from that. And then we have our 1 carrot with the skin on that we'll add in here. And at this point, before I add the liquid ingredients, I do want to give this a stir. So now that the dry ingredients and produce are together, I just want to give them a nice mix and try to coat the apple and the carrot with the flour and the oats. And just break that up a little bit before we start adding the wet ingredients. And for the wet ingredients, I'm going to start with 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. You can also use coconut oil here if you like. I didn't have any of that in the house, so we're going to go with the vegetable oil. We also have the agave syrup that we're using here. You can use molasses, you can use honey. If your equine friends prefer molasses or honey, definitely use that. Ours tend to have a preference for the agave syrup. Not sure if it's the sweet level or the cost, maybe. Maybe they know how much of a cost difference there is So we added the vegetable oil and the agave syrup. All that we have left is water. And this is just 1 tablespoon of water. This is what we're going to start with. We may need to add more water depending on the moisture level of the cookies. And we'll go through what that is going to look like. But for now, let's start with 1 tablespoon of water. We're going to mix that all up again. And hopefully we're going to see some of that dryness go away as the moisture that we just added with the agave syrup, the water, and the vegetable oil starts to take hold. If you would like, you are more than welcome to use your hands doing this. It will stick to your hands a bit, but it also gives you more feedback, more information on whether you need more water or not. So we have a pretty good consistency in here, but now I want to get in there with my hands and really make sure that everything is well combined and that we're going to stick together and see if we need to add any more moisture or if it's too wet and we need to add more flour. As you can see, it's not sticking together great. So I want to be able to get a small, secure ball here with it. And I'll bring it closer to the camera so you get a sense of what I'm dealing with. You can tell it's just too moist. And hopefully you can see some of the liquid coming out of that. We want to make sure the liquid is not coming out, but that it's holding together really well. So I'm going to add some more whole wheat flour to this and make sure that we have that nice solid cookie base. So this is when you really need to be able to have some flexibility with your recipe. Because we do need to add more than what's on the recipe card, you're going to have to play this by ear, and you're going to have to use your own best judgment. And for people who may not be as comfortable cooking or baking, that might be a little bit difficult. But you really can't go wrong here. You can add a little bit more flour, and if you add too much flour, then add a little bit more water until you get the consistency that you're looking for. So I added an extra 2 tablespoons of flour, and that's still not getting me to where I want to be. So I'm going to start adding some more, and I'm going back to another 2 tablespoons. So this is an extra 4 tablespoons of whole wheat flour that I added from the basic recipe. So now that we have our dough all set and it's a consistency that we can work with, we can use either our hands and roll them up into a little ball, or we can use ice cream scoopers, cookie dough scoopers too, or Italian meatball scoopers, depending on the size of the cookies that we want. So for our purposes, we're making these for 2 mini donkeys that we have. And so what I'm going to do is use the smaller scooper and just use that to make the balls of dough and pop them on the cookie sheet. Now once they're on the cookie sheet, I'm going to want to roll them together. So I have the one that I made earlier that I rolled out at the beginning, and then the ones that I popped out of the cookie dough scooper, I'm going to just roll up and make sure they're a little bit more uniform, because I do want to freeze these and I do want them to bake uniformly. If you have cookies or biscuits that are all different sizes and shapes, the cook is going to be uneven. So I like to use the cookie dough scooper or the batter scooper so that I'm making sure that the amount of batter is fairly consistent across the cookies. And one of the reasons I want to do this is because if you have cookies that are similar shape, they're going to bake uniformly, and you won't have to mess around with the bake time as much. So now we have half a batch ready to go in the oven. You can see that there are 9 cookies on this tray. We probably could fit a little bit more. I'm so used to baking with baking soda or baking powder and having cookies that are going to spread on the cookie sheet. These won't spread very much. So what I would actually recommend doing is just give them a little press on the top so that they're not going to roll off, but also so that they'll cook a little bit more evenly. Okay, so there are our cookies. They're ready to go into the 375-degree oven for about 25 minutes. You don't have to flip them over in between, But if you wanted to halfway through, you can rotate the cookie sheet just to make sure everything's browning and cooking evenly. Okay, so this has been 25 minutes in the oven at 375 degrees on the middle rack. We have the other cookie sheet is in there right now finishing up. So this is the first batch that we made together. As you can see, they're nice and golden brown, and there's a little bit of play in them, a little bit of flexibility. If you want to cook them a little bit longer, you definitely can do that and have a more crunchy cookie. I like to have a soft-ish cookie. What I'm going to do now is move them on to a cooling rack and let these cool completely before hand delivering them to the donkeys. So once these are cooled completely, you can put them into a Ziploc storage bag. You can also put them into other storage containers if you want to freeze them or refrigerate them for about a week in the refrigerator, probably about 2 months in the freezer. It probably won't last that long though. When you do freeze them, you want to make sure that you're taking as much air as possible out of the container, whether it's the Ziploc bag or even a sous vide bag would work really well because it has the vacuum system as part of it. I'm not going to try these, but I will post some pictures later of when the donkeys have them. So remember, they have to cool completely. So again, these are the ultimate equine treats with apple, carrot, whole wheat flour, agave nectar, vegetable oil, and some water. So thank you for joining this episode of Cooking for Critters with Clarissa. Have a great afternoon and bon appetit!
We're here with Rosie and Daisy and Hobbs in the background. We're going to see how they like these ultimate equine treats. They're gone already. And that's why we use a flat palm.